Here we're going to look at a couple of examples on how to solve a quadratic equation, specifically using the quadratic formula. Okay, so the quadratic formula, if you remember, is the formula that says x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now where this formula comes from is from rearranging your formula or your equation into standard form and identifying the pieces. The number one most important part to this is that we have to take this equation and you must always set equal to 0. So in this case it's not, it's set equal to 2, so I have to rearrange my equation so it's set equal to 0. What that means is I got to move that 2, so I'm going to have 2x squared plus an x minus 2 equals 0. Once you're set equal to 0, you can identify the a, b, and c. So here a is 2, b is 1, c is negative 2. As soon as you do that, the very next thing you have to do is simply take the a, b, and c and plug them into your formula. So here we have that x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 2. And this whole thing is going to be over 2 times 1. Once you plug everything in, it's just simply now a matter of reducing and solving as far as you can go. And so here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work inside your radical. Okay? So here, we would have that this is negative 1 plus or minus 1 squared is 1. I have negative times negative, which is positive. 4 times 2 is 8, times 2 more is 16, and the whole thing is over 2 times 2, which is 4. So here this is going to end up reducing to become negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 17 all over 4. Now once you reduce your radical down as far as it can go, you need to look at this piece here and you need to try to reduce completely. Now the square root of 17 already is reduced as far as it can go, meaning there are no perfect squares that I can pull out of that square root of 17. And so since it is reduced completely, it means that your solutions are that x equals negative 1 plus the square root of 17 all over 4 and negative 1 minus the square root of 17 all over 4. And that would be your result. Alright, let's look at another one. So here again, the very first thing that we need to make sure that we do here is we need to set equal to 0. So my squared term is already positive, so I'm going to take both of my terms on the left and I'm going to move them over to my square. So this becomes 6n squared minus a 5n minus 1 equals 0. I can identify then that a is 6, b is negative 5, and c is negative 1. So here I can go ahead and start plugging it in. So I have that x is equal to negative of my negative 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 5 squared minus 4 times 6 times negative 1 all over 2 times 6. So we can start reducing this. So here you're going to have that this is equal to 5 plus or minus the square root of 25. Negative times negative is positive. 6 and 4 is 24 times 1 is 24. And this whole thing is over 12. Continuing on, we have 5 plus or minus the square root of 49 all over 12. Again, we need to reduce, and we know that the square root of 49 is going to become 7. 7 times 7. So here, this is 5 plus or minus 7 all over 12. Now at this point, we have to take this and we need to do the math. We don't just leave it like this, we have to do the math. So what that says is that we're going to have 5 plus 7 divided by 12 and 5 minus 7 divided by 12. So we have to actually do the math in both cases. So here we have that 5 plus 7 is 12. So this is going to be 12 over 12. And 5 minus 7 is going to be negative 2 over 12. And so if we look at that, they both reduce. This becomes a 1, and this becomes negative 1/6. So here, my solutions are that x equals 1 and negative 1/6. Here we need to make sure that the equation is set equal to 0. So we're going to take this negative 1 and we're going to move it. So our equation is going to become 4n squared plus 6n plus 1 equals 0. Then just like before, we can identify that your a is 4, your b is 6, and your c is 1. Using that allows us again to plug into your formula. So here we have that x is going to be negative b, so negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So with that we can work on reducing. So here we're going to have negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared is 36 minus 4 times 4 is 16, and this is going to be all over 8. So we can keep working on reducing. So we're going to have negative 6 plus or minus 36 minus 16 gives us with 20, and again all over 8. Now here you need to make sure that we reduce the radical. So when we look at the square root of 20, we know that 20 can break down into 5 times 4, and we know that 4 itself is a perfect square because 4 would break down into 2 times 2. So what happens is that our radical is going to become negative 6 plus or minus 2 square roots of 5 all over 8. Now the last thing that we need to do is we need to reduce the fraction. So here we have 6 over 8 and 2 over 8. Okay, so we need to go ahead and reduce that. And in both of these, we can divide out the 2. And so here we end up with negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 5 all over 4. And that would be your solution. So in this case, you would have that x is negative 3 plus the square root of 5 over 4, and negative 3 minus the square root of 5 over 4. Since we're reduced as far as we can go, there's nothing else left to do. Alright, in this last one that I wanted to look at here, again, we have to set everything equal to 0. So this time I'm going to take the stuff on the left and I'm going to move it over. And the reason I'm going to do that is because my square term right here is already positive. So we're going to end up with 0 equals 4m squared minus a 7m plus 3. So here my a is 4, my b is negative 7, and my c is 3. So again, x is negative b, so negative of my negative 7, plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. So in this case, again, we can continue. Negative and negative is positive, so this is 7 plus or minus the square root of 7 squared is 49. My sign of subtraction, 4 times 4 times 3, gives you 48. And this whole thing is over 8. If we keep going, we get 7 plus or minus the square root of 1 all over 8. The square root of 1 we can evaluate, so this becomes 7 plus or minus 1 all over 8. And this is where we need to make sure that we actually do the math. So we don't have any radicals, so here we actually can finish out the math. So we are going to have 7 plus 1 over 8, and we are going to have 7 minus 1 over 8. So in this case, 7 plus 1 is going to give you 8 over 8, which reduces down to 1. And then 7 minus 1 is going to be 6 over 8, which is going to reduce down to 3 over 4. So in this case here, your solutions are going to be that x equals 1 and x equals 3 over 4. So that's everything that you need to know in a nutshell about solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.